Welcome back to the Christian's Quest podcast. If you've made it this far, you are a super fan by now. All jokes here, and if the audio sounds different, I say we, meaning me, I finally got some microphones, and so I'm no longer doing it in my car. I'm currently in my dining room right now, but there's not going to be a designated spot when it comes to the podcast. I have some people who lined up. We're going to record their episodes, and we're going to have a good time. It's the Christian's Quest and all of that. But anyway, this episode's going to be a little bit different. I'm actually not going to be in the book today. I am going to be sharing a message. And excuse the way I sound. I just got over being sick. Not getting sick. I don't want to get sick. But anyway. So excuse the way I sound. I just got over getting sick, and I'm like 85% sure that I am better. But anyway, I just wanted to share a message, so this episode will be a little different. And so just bear with me, sit back, try to decipher what I say, but all that. But anyway, so I don't know if I've mentioned it in this podcast, but I know I've mentioned it in my books and, to just other people about how I love to write poetry. Yeah, I love to write poetry. See, a lot of times I don't necessarily like to read it, but if it's my poetry, I'll read it. But writing has been kind of my therapy throughout the years, and I've just found a peace with writing, and it's so amazing to think about that, because my freshman year of high school, I wasn't even confident in my writing, and here we are, like, I'm not going to even try to do the math, but like 4 to 5 years later, and here I am writing books and poetry and messages for church and stuff like that, starting a podcast, even though that has nothing to do with writing. But anyway, I've been writing a little bit more. I don't know necessarily, I would call this a free verse, but I don't know if it is technically a free verse. So if it's not a poem, I'm calling it a poem, but it's just words that I wrote on a legal pad and just, had to write it on paper. But I wrote this January 2nd of this year, 2026, and I also wrote a verse on the bottom of it to kind of help give a clue what the writing is about. But first, it's called A Boy Who Could Not Sing. First, I'm going to read Exodus 4:11 through 12. It says, "The Lord said to him, who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf, not deaf, or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak, and you will teach. And will teach you what to say." So I got that from the NIV version of the Bible. I'm not knocking on how anyone reads their Bible. Everyone reads it differently. I now have an NIV Bible, but I have 3 Bibles before that. I have a CSB, NKJV, and something else that I cannot remember. So I'm not knocking on how people read their Bible. NIV is just the easiest way for me to understand it and study it to where, I understand what God is trying to tell me. But anyway, just to understand the great word. So now I'm going to read A Boy Who Cannot Sing, and it says, "Let me tell you about a boy who cannot sing. He loved to do it, but he just couldn't. He sounded nothing like the people close to him. He would even pray for a voice. He still could not sing. The Lord, of course, loved his voice, but no one else did. The boy started to joke about his singing. Little did the boy know that when he prayed for a voice, the Lord gave it to him, not the way that he had wanted. The Lord said, 'Sing my praise as loud as you desire, but I've called you to speak, not sing.' So the boy does just that, speak." So, if you have not figured it out quite yet, that boy is me, and it's about me. So, if you know anything about me, you know that I love music, and if you also know anything about me, you know I cannot sing to save my life, and I've always wanted to sing because I love music so much, and I want to be able to sing songs and stuff like that, but I just couldn't sing. And there came a time where I would wish that I would be able to sing, and just like, Lord, I wish I could sing, stuff like that, and like, or I pray that I could sing, and God like gave me a voice, or like I would pray for a voice, and that intention of that prayer, the intention of that prayer is like a singing voice, but instead of giving me that singing voice, he gave me a speaking voice, meaning to go and share his gospel. You know, I've accepted the calling that to ministry. You know, I've spoken in youth with a message called Dare to Be Different. I'll probably share that message in another episode. I haven't quite decided that yet. But needless to say, I wanted a voice to sing and thought I needed that voice, but God had other plans. So basically, like, and I have in my notes where it says, explain there are things that we want, that we think we need, but that's not always the case. So, for instance, I wanted a voice. I thought I needed the voice to sing, but I was wrong. And God used that prayer for something else to also show me later that, yeah, the prayer's been answered, but not the way that I had hoped, if that makes any sense. Proverbs 16:9 says, in their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. Sometimes we pray a prayer, but God uses that prayer for something else. You know, we tend to plan our course, and that's great, but we need to allow God to establish our steps. So, you know, this goes a little kind of off topic to like this message, a boy who cannot sing, but you know, a lot of times we don't sit still long enough to let God or the Lord establish our steps, to guide us. A lot of times we want to go on our own path, or we want to create this version where we're kind of doing it together, and we are walking this life with God, but he needs to be the Lord in our life. He needs to be the leader in that, and to establish our steps. I promise you, God knows what he's doing, and it's completely better than what we think we want. But yeah, sometimes we pray a prayer, and God uses that prayer for something else. I know we don't necessarily sit down and dissect like, oh, well, I prayed this prayer and it was used for this, that, the other. I mean, you know, so, I mean, if you want to sit down and do that, great. You know, that's, I would say, is a way of kind of just appreciating God for all that he does. You know, there's many ways to appreciate God for all he does. I mean, I try to every morning to wake up and say, God, thank you for waking me up. But anyway, Isaiah 55:8-9, and these are still in the NIV version if you were still wondering, but it says, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. We may think we know what we need or what we want, but it's like I said before, God knows what we need more. And it's like I said again before, and he has a greater plan for us. We always, I won't say always, but we do tend to try to take the easy way out when sometimes we have to just slow down, go through the storm, and let's learn through that process and trust that God has a greater plan, because I promise you he does have a greater plan. Who I am now compared to 2 years ago are completely different people, and that's all because, you know, a year and a half ago, I believe it was a year and a half ago, June of 24, I finally just said, I'm going to let God do it. I'm going to let God declare. I'm going to let the Lord guide my path. He also knocked me on my feet after resisting so much, but still, he has a greater plan for me, and the fact is we need to trust that greater plan in order to see things better. We need to become more aware, at what he's doing. So, for instance, going back to the poem or whatever about me being called to speak. So, like I said, I accepted the calling to be in ministry. I've asked 2 people from church, my hyphen pastor, Cal Johnson, and and the youth pastor, but he wasn't my youth pastor because I came afterwards, but he's still someone that means the world to me. But the youth pastor, Nathan Ward, I asked them to be my mentors. But before, after I accepted the calling to be in ministry to speak, before that there was many signs of being called to speak, but I was focusing more on my comfort rather than what should have been done. I remember a couple people from church, that someone told my grandma, I'm prophesying here, he's gonna be a preacher. My great grandmother says, I still believe that Blane's gonna be, a preacher. I remember when I was little or whatever, that apparently when I would go to church with my grandma and the pastor would make a point, and this was in a Baptist church or whatever, that he'd say something, I'd say, praise the Lord. So, it kind of does. So all those years later, once I converted to being an apostolic Pentecostal or whatever, basically my family just said, Blane, we're not surprised. So I was always called to be a oneness Pentecostal. But there were many signs. I also remember at HYC where I was praying and this person came to me, and I never opened my eyes when I was praying, never looked up or whatever, but he prayed over me and he said, I had a vision and I see you standing behind a pulpit. And the way that I look at it is that he may have told other people that, but the fact of the matter that this is something that I know God's called me to, and he told me that, it's still, in my belief, another sign. And this was around a time where I still just wasn't sure if I was to be called to speak, or if I just, if I just wasn't listening, or if because sometimes we get our calling and we run with it, but we don't slow down to say, wait a minute, hold on, God, what do you intend with this calling? And like I said at the beginning of this episode, I tend to always joke that the Lord knew that I would be way too powerful if I was able to sing, because I just love music that much. My grandma always says, Blaine, I wish you could sing, because, you would just have a ball with it, singing in front of the church and stuff like that. And maybe, I don't know, but I look at it as I do love to sing, even though I can't sing. And I look at it as a way of maybe if I could sing, that God knew that if I was able to sing, that maybe I wouldn't be a good person, or I would use it not the right way. And, so God just, there has to be restrictions. I don't know. That's just a food for thought, and that's just me just thinking out loud. It's not me to bash on myself or whatever. Or make myself feel bad. It's just, maybe that's what the Lord knew. The Lord knew it. Jesus knew everything that we were going to do. The good, the bad, the ugly, and yet he still called us worth dying for. And that's just, I know that got a little off topic, but that's just worthy to praise over. But yeah, I joke he knew I'd be way too powerful if I was able to sing. And it's funny too, because there's a lot of people in my church at the river that can sing. and or play an instrument. Some can sing and play an instrument. Some can play an instrument or sing. But it's funny because, like, I've been going, so like March makes 4 years since I've been going, and it's almost like everywhere I look as time went on, another person popped up and they'd be able to sing or they can play the instrument. And I would just joke and say, like, man, the Lord just, that's where I would say, like, the Lord has a sense of humor. Or maybe it's just to humble me. I don't know. But it's still, I just like to joke about it and talk about it. It's funny. So in my notes right here, I cannot sing, and I prayed for a voice that could change lives. And again, I'm not going to sing right now. Trust me, I want you to continue listening to this podcast, so I'm not going to sing right now. And I know how I said, like, I prayed for a voice, but like I said, I prayed for a voice, but not necessarily to sing, even though it was the intention of that. I mean, I've always yearned to be able to sing or to wish I could be able to sing. And I mean, I know I've said things like, God, I wish I could sing, or God, help me be able to sing, or whatever. But I do remember there was a time where I didn't necessarily say it, but it was like a prayer where I said, could you give me a voice? And I mean, that what I meant by that was to be able to sing, but the Lord had other plans. But anyway, I cannot sing, and I prayed for a voice that could change lives. I have prayed that. I have prayed, God, give me a voice to where I can change lives. Help me change lives. And that prayer was answered. It's like I've been saying. The prayer was answered, but it was in a way that I never imagined. I have written books. I have spoken in youth, spoken in hyphen, started a podcast. I have an Instagram channel called Jesus Freaks. And if you know anything about me, okay, I know I keep saying it like that, and to those who don't know me, I know you're listening to me talk and it sounds like I'm an extrovert, but I hate to break it to you, I'm not an extrovert. I tried for years to say that I was an extrovert, but as I got older and later in high school and into college, I started to accept the fact, or maybe it was middle of high school, I don't know, but I started to accept the fact that I was not an extrovert. I'm not saying extroverts live for attention, but I just don't like the attention on me. I mean, for instance, when I first published The Christian's Quest, I literally told my grandma, I said, I'm going to publish it on Amazon, I'm going to make the announcement, and, I don't want to just do this or do that, I don't want to sell it in church, I don't want to, and she was like, Blane, how are they going to know about your book if you don't promote it in a way? I mean, I have an Instagram. I mean, like, if you're listening to this, I mean, this podcast is also part of that Instagram. It's called The Christian's Quest. So, I mean, if you want to go follow there and get all the updates, that is perfectly fine as well. But, like, I don't like the attention on me, and I think that was a lot of the resistance where it came about being called to speak, and that I just had to get past that hurdle about getting up in front of people. And believe it or not, I go to Southeastern and I'm studying to be an elementary teacher. So whether I like it or not, I'm going to have to speak in front of people every day. And I would definitely say that since my freshman year of college all the way to now, I mean, I'm a junior, a lot has changed. If you go to anyone at the river who I'm close with, I would just challenge you to say, hey, how long have you known Blane? Or, something like that. And they'll tell you just a year and a half or whatever. I mean, I've been going there for almost 4 years. I knew a lot of them, but I did not speak to them because I was just that introverted. I mean, Ethan and his family were about the only ones that I ever spoke to. And that's because Ethan and I went to school together. We were on the baseball team together. But the thing about it is I pushed myself. And now I've met amazing people. Terrific people. I love the River Church. I could just spend a whole episode talking about how the River Church is the greatest place on earth. But back to what I was saying, I am extremely introverted. So that's why I say in a way that I prayed for a voice that could change lives, and that prayer was answered, but in a way that I could never imagine. Because I'm telling you right now, even though I would say you could probably go all the way to maybe freshman year or 8th grade year Blane and tell him, hey, in the future you're going to be speaking in church. I don't think he would necessarily laugh at you, but I think he would get nervous. He would be like, oh, great, something like that. Not that he would be upset by it, because I think he would be crawling in his skin because he would be wondering, how did he come to that? Because I'm telling you right now, freshman year Blane would be terrified of the present day Blane. I mean, even freshman year of college. I know I'm talking about freshman of high school, but freshman of college Blane, he was a confident kid, all of that, but he still would be shocked by who I am today. But I pushed myself. And when I accepted the calling to speak, to be in ministry, I know I've told a couple people this, and also I've spoken in front of church to do offering and announcements in church, and that is intimidating more than anyone will ever know. And because at first I'm like, oh, that'll be a piece of cake. I mean, it's just in front of the church. I have spoken in youth and hyphen and stuff like that. I did that, and let me tell you, my voice was so shaky. Even though everyone told me that my voice wasn't and that I did fine, I felt like my voice was so shaky. So yeah, I've done that. But, excuse me. But what I was saying was, I think I've told Brother Kyle and Brother Nate this. I know I've told my grandma this, but one thing that I'm working on now, because I am still introverted, and even though I can get in front of people and talk, doesn't necessarily mean I absolutely want to, or that I'm jumping for joy and woo, woo, yay, yay. Like, no, that's just not me. I do want to get up there and I do want to share the word of the great word of Jesus Christ and the gospel, but it's not like I'm, first in line, I guess. I don't want to make that sound wrong. But anyway, I remember telling them that, and this is something that I'm working on, that when I'm asked, a lot of times I want to say no because of my comfort zone, but I say yes. So, and I also speak with preteens. I'm lined up to do it in a couple weeks, again. And even though whenever I got the text asking if I was available to do it, and my mind was like wanting to come up with an excuse, I also have to remind myself that this is your calling and you've asked for this. And it's just like, I love the advice that Brother Kyle gives. Don't ask for a pulpit, let it ask for you. That's probably one of the greatest advice that someone's ever given. Also, another thing that's like really great that I'll just use I use a lot now, and I heard it a couple of days ago, was one of the elders at our church, Sister Betty Taylor. She said, she was talking about something, I'm not going to get into details for privacy reasons, but how she would say that she'd pray one more prayer and that prayer would be answered. And I'm kind of having that mentality now, but I'm also, after I've prayed a lot, because I'm not going to go like pray once, and then the second time, one more prayer. Because, I mean, we have to let God work. I know, I chase rabbits. See, I'm chasing them now. Like, I get off topic a lot. But anyway, yeah, and like, but no, I've started this podcast, and here I am talking. Look, I hate the sound of my own voice. It drives me insane, and it's funny because it's just funny. Like, I would tell everyone, like, I don't understand why they don't listen to their own music or why they don't watch their own shows or movies or like actors and singers. I now understand it. I mean, sometimes I can't even read my own book because I see all the errors and like how it sounds like me. And I'm not saying I'm not confident in myself and I don't have great self-esteem. I mean, but my voice, I just hate the sound of my voice. But that's also probably because when I was younger, I had like what I like to call a chipmunk voice, and then puberty hit, and my voice just lowered, and I don't think I ever got used to that. But let's see here. Yeah, I've written books. I'm writing one right now, The Christian's Quest, Calling His Name in the Darkness, and it is describing about a time, or it's detailing about a time, and it was in June of 25, even a little bit prior to that, about a dark season that I went through. And just, it was me, I'm detailing my thoughts and, just my surroundings, things that were going on at the time. It's been an eye-opener, and I'm writing it to like share that we all go through a dark season, because sometimes we don't believe we do, or we say that they aren't experiencing it like me, and I just, even though we all go through things. But let's see. And then the Instagram channel, Jesus Freaks, is on my regular account. You would go to my account and click on the thing. It's a channel. I mean, if you have Instagram and you're on a channel, you would know what I mean. I don't really know how to like explain that. But anyway, we all have a calling and a purpose, and sometimes it is something we do not understand. Again, when everyone would tell me that I'm going to be a preacher or that I'm going to do this, I don't know what I'm going to be. All I know is that I've told God that I understand you have called me, and I ask you to guide my steps. I have said that I don't see myself in this position or that position, but then I'll stop myself and say, but it's not up to me. It's up to God. And again, like I just said, we have a calling, we have a purpose. And yes, we don't understand it sometimes. I am an introvert. I have severe anxiety. I can procrastinate. I can tell you that. I have low self-esteem sometimes, trust issues. I overthink a lot, and and what am I trying to say? So yeah, when I finally accepted that I was called to be in ministry, you think I understood why he was calling me? No, because it's like, how could he use someone like me? How could I reach people? Excuse me, take a sip of my water. And we tend to want to write our own story at times when instead we should be let God writing it. One of the greatest messages that I ever heard, and it was before I converted to oneness, converted to apostolic, Pentecostal. One of the greatest messages I heard, it was when I was at a non-denominational church. I was at youth camp, and the pastor of the church that I go to now, so Pastor Josh Payne, was preaching at our youth camp when I was going to a non-denom church. And there was 2 messages. I still remember them. It was like 8 years ago. Like, one was 9 years ago and the other one was, man, it really was that long. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm like reminiscing here. Wait, no, it was 8 to 7 years. Yeah, youth camp of 2018 and youth camp of 2019. Yeah. So anyway, like I said, I get sidetracked. But one of the messages that, and I'm just going to share like that one. I don't think I could tell you which year. No, I could tell you which year it was. It was the second year. And Pastor had talked about letting God write our stories and how we tend to not want him to write our story, or we tend to get, what's the right word? We tend to forget that he's writing our story or get carried away. And he had said something like, are you going to quit ripping that pen out of God's hand and trying to write your own story? Or like, when are you going to realize that you can't write and realize that you cannot write your own story? And that you're going to hand that pen back over and say, take it. And that was just wonderful. I mean, magnificent. Like, I can't tell you, like, I remember bits and pieces of messages, but the 2 that Pastor preached on there before I even went to the river, and I love it because it's like a God moment, because, I was at this church at the time, had no plans of leaving, and here I am 4 years later at the church that Pastor Josh Blane preaches at, and he preached at my youth camps, But anyway, and that was probably one of the greatest messages that I've ever heard. I mean, it's probably why I added it in my notes, where it's like we tend to want to write our own story. We want to make things glamorous. We want comfort, because discomfort we don't like it. You may say you like discomfort, but after a while you don't. But so with that, we want to write our own story. We want to be able to do it our way at times. But instead, we should let God write our story, because there will come a time where we get too comfortable. And sometimes being too comfortable can hurt us. But that's not the point. We need to let God write our story and let him help guide our steps so we can be led to what greater plan he has. Because we can't get to that plan and we can't hear what God has for us if we won't listen, or if we won't help him help us, if that makes any sense. So we, as humans, by default, hate discomfort. Just said that. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes, so it's like I'm going down the list. We as humans, we hate discomfort by default. So we try to take an easy way, an easy path, the easy way out, whatever's easiest. I mean, I look at it as cooking. I don't like to cook, but that's because it takes so long. So instead, I would like to just get something out of the pantry because that's easier. That's probably a horrible analogy, but it makes sense in my head. But anyway, we hate discomfort because, so we try to take the easy way out, but not everything is easy, because if it were, how would we learn anything? We have to go through things so we know how, when we are thrown at it again, how to handle it. Look at this. Moses hesitated. Jeremiah hesitated. Jonah ran away ran away, but God still used them. So if you're thinking right now that you cannot be used, that if you don't have a calling or whatever, open up the Bible and look at some of these people in the Bible. God uses the broken, and that is just amazing. We have to slow down. A lot of times we have to slow down. We're living in a world where that is tough. That is so hard to slow down because we got deadlines, we got due dates, we got, you may want to binge that show. I know that's a horrible way to say it. Or, again, you need to make that phone call. You need to pay that bill. You need to turn in that homework. You need to give this to your boss. You need to give this to, we have deadlines. And in the world, slowing down in this world just seems impossible. And I know it's tough. Like I just said, there is always a deadline. But we have to trust in God. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways know him, and he will make your path straight." That, I believe, is not in the NIV. I think it is the CSB. I did not write Proverbs 3:5-6 in my notes because, quite honestly, that Proverbs 3:5-6, if you've read my book, you know that's my verse. I think I may even used it in my second book. I always use Proverbs 3:5-6. It's kind of what I call my life quote or my life verse. What I try to live my life by. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Because quite honestly, our own understanding is crazy. In all your ways know him, and he will make your path straight. So we may not get what we want, and we may not have all the answers. I for sure know that I don't. I don't understand everything in this world. I don't understand why God would call me. Or in a way now I do, but when all of this was fresh and new, I couldn't and didn't understand why he would call me. Well, there's a lot of things in this world that we don't understand. But anyway, if God can call me, someone with anxiety, trust issues, overthinking, a procrastinator, at times a chronic introvert, someone who I just said trust issues. I think I have mild depression. A whole lot. I think I have ADD or ADHD. I don't know. I'm not diagnosed. That's not important. But anyway, if God can call me someone who has all those things, then he most certainly can use anyone. We just have to trust him. I promise you, some may say, "Oh, well, that's a lot easier said than done." No. It's so simple to trust him. So simple. But anyway, that concludes that message. I'll probably talk for a couple more minutes. But that is A Boy Who Could Not Sing. I wrote that kind of just, I don't know what time of day that I wrote it, but I wrote it because I wanted to share it. I shared it on my Blane.writes account on Instagram, where I share all of my writings and stuff. But I wanted to share it because, when I wrote it, it's just something that I had on me because, it just goes deeper into, how God uses us and how God gives us a calling that we may not know what to do with. But we just have to trust his path. It's, for instance, my grandma and I had a conversation here recently about how, we have to trust God's process, but we also are kind of we pray for an answer, pray for what are you using me for. I mean, for instance, right now, where I'm at in my academics, I've questioned some things and just not sure if I am doing the right thing by wanting to be a teacher. And, it's like my grandma was saying, is sometimes we need to listen to God, but also we need to be aware. And sometimes being aware just is hard. Anyway, that was A Boy Who Could Not Sing. If you stayed this long, I know this is an incredibly long episode. I pretty much knew it would be because I like to ramble. But if you stayed this long, I appreciate it and I thank you. We will not be doing a hot topic this episode. Hot topics will be done a lot in my special guest episodes. I am starting to get the ball rolling on recording those soon. I don't know when they will be aired, but I look forward to doing that. But anyway, that is A Boy Who Could Not Sing. Quite frankly, it's a simple message of, God is going to use you. Whether you think so or not, God is going to use you. But anyway, thank you for listening for this long. I know it's over 40 minutes. And thank you for sticking with me. It's always kind of hard to finish these episodes on the right note. But anyway, thank you again. I know I say thank you a lot. But again, thank you. And tune in next time and have a blessed day. And remember, the quest still continues. Take care, everyone.